Art.
Okay. Interrogation. On trial. Well, a mixture of materials. Oil paints, usually. Sometimes powder pigments, bound with either rabbit skin glue or with some type of binder. But generally oil paints, just thinned with turpentine, nothing fancy at all. Painting with oil paint is very toxic. And for many years I painted in small spaces with very liquid paint, because I like to thin the paint down a lot to make it quite watery. And over the years I found that I could actually paint less and less in this way. I mean, I couldn't time-wise, because it was causing such problems to my back and my my internal being organs, I guess. So that's why I started painting with powder paints, because far less toxic. Over the years you negotiate the material and you learn to use it in your own ways, really. Problems for me in painting are generally to do with technical problems. Technical ineptitude on my part, and then finding ways to solve my ineptitude. I mean, my lack of ability natural ability to draw, for instance. So I devise ways of correct the painting. When I say correct it, I mean correct the composition. Find a way of making the composition work the way I want to work. A lot of trial and error, a lot of kind of erasing, I suppose, scraping off, adding on to it, building. It's a building process, really. A fluid space for a kind of narrative to exist. That's not as static as a flat plane can be. It's a place for an activity to take place that generally has a narrative in my mind. An idea taking form into something that's alive yet flat. In my case, it comes in stages. It's not a fixed idea from the beginning. It's something that evolves in the making. It's just something that that builds over time and then changes, and for me the change is important to still be able to see in some instances, so that depiction still has some life to it. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's important that the canvas is body size for me. Size isn't all about just making a big painting. It's about sort of the way color behaves when it's like seeing a yellow field. It's kind of more. It's different than seeing a single yellow flower, say. I wouldn't say coloring alone. In my case, anyway. I mean, I think it's important to have. There has to be some sort of object for me, or something that's described. Sometimes it's suggestion. Other times it's something that's quite sort of bland and sort of banal. It's just something it is what it is. Sometimes you need the element of it is what it is within a painting to allow you to have other areas of, like, what is it possibly? I think writing and painting can be quite similar. I think writing and poetry can be very similar. But I think that painting and photography can be very different, because I think painting in a way allows, the artist to express something that combines not just touch, as in the touch of the brush, but like sensation of depicting sensation of touch, and I think that's very different to what you can achieve in photography. It's hard for me to say about my own work, but sometimes I see that too much in other people's work, and then I lose interest in the work quite quickly. I mean, I admire painting where I'm confused as to how it was made, or and this can be a very, very old painting or a very new painting. Like you think, how did this become what it is really? Why does when someone mixes oil color and put it on a canvas, why does it look like that when the same person uses the same color and it looks so different? There's something unique about the way each individual uses it. The best paintings have that, but also this sort of mystery as to mystery in the making. Well, if you think about, say, Jackson Pollock, for instance, as an example, you could say that you can look at his paintings and say, "Oh, I can see how he did that," because you can't. It's, he's literally flicked the paint, thrown the paint, but still, the great paintings of his totally transcend the method. The same could be said for, talking about painter of the same era, someone like de Kooning. And I would say the same can be said for Balthus as well. I mean, like when you look at a Balthus painting, you look at, there's so many elements to the making of that painting, and it's not, the figuration actually is almost not that important really. It's this thing that the objectness of it and the surface of it, and the way he's used these materials, which, let's face it, when you go to an art shop and you see, there's nothing more sort of boring than looking at paints in an art shop and in their tubes. It's like you might as well be in a chemist or a drugstore and you see all these tubes of things, but it's what happens, after that. Well, I think when you look around, sometimes you can imagine the state of mind people were in when they made certain paintings. And I think that, with a lot of lazy painting that you may see, for instance, in an art academy. I'm not saying there's much of it, but you can see, using an art academy as an example, you can see paintings that were made in a kind of fairly lazy way without much, time spent or thought or actual care or just conviction, really. And then you can see other ones where the person obviously did get lost in the process of making the painting and maybe spent much time or had even just an hour that was something, where they kind of had there was an experience that happened within that time that resulted in something that's not what I just described. I don't know. I mean, I often wonder about how paintings are made. For instance, you see these Francis Bacon paintings, and you realize he painted in a very, very small studio. We've seen pictures of the studio, and we know that he made paintings with huge amounts of turpentine. I can't help but think that he must have been affected by the materials, because I know what it's like to be affected by the materials, and I think that I'm not saying that's the only reason why his paintings like this, probably just a part of the reason, but there's definitely something there, apart from just the, being able to sort of escape into the world of painting. It's actually probably a lot more physical than people would imagine. I mean, because I think that, when you're making big canvases, there's a great deal of physical work to make it. I mean, there are times when you might be sitting down and actually spending, you know, a number of hours working on something that's quite, you know, there's not that much physical, but there's other times when you're actually sort of like, you know, scraping off big areas of the canvas or painting big areas like this. So I think there's a lot of times when you're basically trying to, or desperately trying to rescue a painting because you've done something that has actually, you realize that this has got to change and this has got to, and that takes, you know, a great amount of physical effort to get that off or to put it on as well. So in some ways, it's a mixture of like, of lots of things. It's a lot of times when you're being, you know, you lose yourself in the act of painting. And then there's other times when you're actually sort of in a way being very focused, kind of, you know, scrambling to sort of, to catch up with it and pull it all together. And that can stretch over the course of months. So you're not just one person. You're not just in one state of mind. I mean, there's parts of a painting that actually might be very boring to paint. You've got a big area, you have to sort of, you know you've got to fill this area in, and it's actually quite hard physical work, just, you know, just painting this particular area. And it's, you know, because of the type of ground you choose, which means that the paint is not just gliding on the surface, the paint has to be kind of really, really rubbed into the surface. Yeah, you're in a different mood in the middle of the night when you actually think you're actually on a real roll than when you go in the next morning and you think what you did the night before is a total disaster and you have a fresh look at it. But that's the I think the positive thing about it is that you actually have as much time as you want. There's no rules in that sense. Well, I mean, I think that you can end up surprising yourself, and you can end up making images that you know, certainly didn't exist before, and may change the way, not necessarily you, but the way other people think about the world. Let's not say the world, but their world, or. But that's kind of what you may hope for, but I don't think that's a given. But that would be a big result, I think. And I think that if I think about other people's paintings and the paintings that really do move, you know, really do move you, then that has been achieved, definitely. But I'm not going to use words like philosophy or. Well, I think maybe the way we look at paintings, we're kind of educated to look at paintings, and is maybe unique to this part of the world or Western society, because, you know, you just look at people walking around the museum down the road and the way they look at these things. It's quite interesting looking, and it's like, is that a normal thing to do? To be looking back and forth at this sort of these smears of color on canvas, or some object in the middle of the room. What are they thinking about? Everyone has, but it's the norm. People line up to pay to get into museums and look at these things. I mean, obviously that's come about in the last 100 years or so. It's a fairly recent phenomenon. For instance, when I moved to Trinidad, you know, when I first started going to Trinidad 12 years ago, there was a strong tradition of you know, hand-painted signs still, like most, you know, a good number of advertisements, or at least advertisements in people's establishments were painted by hand, and you know, things would be painted by hand, and I think I would probably look at them in a very different way than the person who painted them, because there's a different agenda there, where the people who are looking at them as just a sign to say, this is, but I would look at them as, I'd be looking at them as a painter or as an artist, and I would think, well, actually that's, to me, a really interesting piece of art, or has possibilities to become a piece of art, that wasn't the intention. I think we are different. We've been trained to be different, and I think it's a difficult. Is it to become like sort of missionaries, trying to convert people to sort of look at painting in the same way we do it? I don't think so. I think it's choice, it's circumstance, it's education too. We can't help but be educated because of where we grew up. We were educated. We knew about things like this from the beginning. Technical invention. I don't know. I mean, I think that we've already had the technical inventions that have changed painting as we know it, but I don't know about stop it. Obvious ones. Cameras and film cameras and projection and printing. But it's not going to stop it, but it's changed it. It's always it's always added to it, I think.